He?
The brute. Their leader. His name is Atriox.
Good morning, good evening, good afternoon. I know not when you are watching this video, but we are here today with a lore video. And we are focusing on Atriox and the Banished. So, without further ado, Atriox is known as a Jurlhane, which is the native name of a brute. He is voiced by John DiMaggio, or John DiMaggio, I am not too sure, who is also the voice of the brute Chieftains in Halo 3 and Halo 3 ODST. Atriox wears unique armor, cannibalized from both ODST and Jurlhane armor pieces. He modifies and wields a Type 2 gravity hammer and also gave it a lovely name called Chainbreaker. He was a member of the Suicide Squad, yes, the Suicide Squad, that the Covenant utilized during their war with the UNSC. He was the only one to return from these suicide missions, and all of these suicide missions had a group of 40 Jurlhane, and these constant death of his packmates grew his hatred for the Covenant, and namely the Prophets, who at the time are the leader of the Covenant. Having Atriox return from mission after mission that was meant to kill him grew his fame among the Covenant. Everybody knew who he was, and everybody wanted to be his friend. No, nobody wants to be a friend of a Jurlhane, as they are brutal killing machines that hate everyone. So his legend grows among the Covenant forces, and this is an issue for the Prophets, because Atriox does not believe in the Great Journey. The Great Journey is the sacrifice and firing of all of the Halo rings. Now, the Halo rings, when they fire, destroy all life in the universe. His disbelief of the Great Journey is an issue that needs to be dealt with, and upon returning from a mission, Atriox is met by a group of elites that are sent to execute him in the name of the Prophets. Now, the actual name of elites is a Sangheili. So after facing his executioner by catching the energy sword that the Sangheili is wielding in his hand, he kills said executioner with his bare hands. As the other elites draw their swords to finalize the execution, Atriox's fellow Jurlhane rose in defiance and slew the other Sangheili where they stood. Decimus, later known to be Atriox's right-hand Jurlhane, knelt before Atriox and pledged allegiance. The other Jurlhane followed suit, and this is where the faction, now known as the Banished, were made. So now we'll be moving on to the first UNSC contact of Atriox, and this happened when Atriox raided an armory containing UNSC equipment. Atriox single-handedly killed all of the ODST, otherwise known as Orbital Drop Shock Troopers. ODST helmet footage revealed the first pictures of Atriox to the UNSC. This attack was a first for the UNSC, as previous Covenant attacks resulted in base destruction and never the theft of UNSC equipment, which was a general theme with the Covenant-UNSC war. The Covenant would never take prisoners of war, whereas the humans would take them all the time because they wanted to get to know them, study them, and potentially broker a peace, because we were losing the war for a really long time. The reason that the Banished did this is because now the Banished have no access to the creation of new weapons. They must steal all new weapons and vehicles to build their forces. And later in the same year, the UNSC raided a Covenant armory, only to find that all of the war machines gone and all the guards dead. The evidence pointed toward Atriox, and the same evidence pointed toward Atriox not only equipping and stealing weapons, but also recruiting fellow members of the Covenant and bringing them to Atriox's cause. And the UNSC theorized that they may be able to broker a treaty with Atriox to bring down the Covenant. The enemy of my enemy is my friend. However, this was never achieved because the UNSC could never get close to Atriox. Rather, the UNSC would use Atriox's guerrilla attacks to their advantage and push against the Covenant where available. This brings us to Atriox's rise of power, and during the period of upheaval in the Covenant, known as the Great Schism, Atriox raided countless weapon storehouses and armories. Now, the Great Schism is an ongoing war between the different Covenant factions, assisted and mainly fought by Jurlhane, Sangheili, and humans. The events of the Great Schism is a large piece of Covenant history and will be covered in a separate video, so stay tuned. During the Schism, a splinter cell of Sangheili was sent to kill all of the Jurlhane, as they were viewed as brutish and not worthy to be in the new Covenant that was hopefully going to be created by this splinter cell of Sangheili. At this time, however, Atriox had the command of an SDV class heavy corvette called the Elegies Lament. The splinter cell, called Silent Shadow, was sent to kill Atriox personally. However, they did not realize that Atriox was their target. They were simply given order to kill a brute, and when they got there, Atriox admitted that he would gladly fight the entire Silent Shadow. However, Atriox convinced everyone except for the leader, known as Reza, to join the banished forces. The new recruits promptly killed Reza and joined the banished. Atriox gained a CAS class carrier called the Enduring Conviction from this encounter. The Enduring Conviction broke formation of the current battle cluster and fled the system. The remaining battle cluster hailed, warned, and fired upon the Enduring Conviction, which performed evasive maneuvers and escaped the system via slipspace. Only spies concluded that Atriox had convinced the shipmaster to join him rather than taking the ship by force, and they know this because they studied the evasive maneuvers used, and they were identical to evasive maneuvers used by the Enduring Conviction in an earlier battle with UNSC forces. However, how Atriox convinced the shipmaster, named Lekgolo, is never revealed. All we know is that Volia swore fealty to Atriox forces in neutral territory and handed over command of all his forces. After these events, intelligence on Atriox began to diminish. This is because most of the spies that were tasked with spying on Atriox himself were fired, and roughly a year after the beginning of the Great Schism, ONI, otherwise known as the Office of Naval Intelligence, began noticing the inclusion of Lekgolo, which is known as hunters, into Atriox's army, and they realized that the Banished for the most part is made up of Covenant forces that do not wish to stop fighting the humans, as the Great Schism had a large divide in the Covenant of forces that both wanted to stop fighting and those that did not wish to lay down arms. So now we skip on to Halo Wars 2. If you don't want Halo Wars 2 spoilers, I suggest you finishing the video here and coming back at a later date. So after the events of Halo 5, the portal to the Ark from Earth suddenly closed, and a month later, Atriox and the Banished forces arrived on the Ark. Atriox then commanded Decimus to slaughter all humans above the Ark, which he gladly did in a very short amount of time, and Atriox's motivations for the Ark was to build a Halo ring. However, he was unable to understand or figure out how to do so. And this is pretty much a main issue with the entire Covenant. All Forerunner technology, which are the people that built the Halo rings and the Ark, was built to be primarily used by humans, as we are ultimately evolutions of Forerunners, just tens of thousands of years later. Rather than admit defeat, Atriox set up mining operations and bases upon the Ark. In 2559, 7 months after Atriox set up camp on the Ark, the Spirit of Fire arrived. The Spirit of Fire promptly dispatched Spartan groups and scouting operations to find out what happened on the Ark, which is where Spartans Jerome, Douglas, and Alice meet Atriox for the very first time, and promptly get absolutely demolished by him. During operations on the Ark, Atriox stays out of combat. We do not have a chance to face him on the battlefield, only his forces. We are, however, able to fight Decimus and Volia. We fight Decimus twice and eventually kill him, which angers Atriox, but not enough to get him to fight us or unleash the full power of the Banished. And we see that the Banished at the end of Halo Wars 2 have a huge army, comprised of Covenant superweapons like Scarabs, and ground forces like Wraiths, Marauders, and Ghosts, and many infantry. At the end of Halo Wars 2, we see Atriox staying on the Ark, leading the remaining Banished forces against the Spirit of Fire and Captain Cutter. Atriox is now unable to leave the Ark now that the Enduring Conviction has been destroyed. So Atriox as a villain is perfect for Halo Wars 2. He's given a tragic backstory, but not a boring tragic. It's actually a very in-depth and links in with the broader Halo universe, which is absolutely amazing. His multiplayer armies are absolutely terrifying. He has abilities that keep his units invulnerable, that stave off death and let them fight, and also to steal health from his enemies. And a fun fact is that Atriox is actually a great car salesman, which is not something you would expect, but it's a funny little tidbit that they did to boost sales and popularity of Halo Wars 2 just prior to release. So thank you for listening and paying attention to Atriox's lore video. I hope you enjoyed it. Leave a like and a comment down below, and also subscribe, because I really want to know what you think about Atriox. Is his hero story just not as tragic as I'm making it out to be, or is it just a bit boring? Is Atriox as a hero he's just angry all the time? He's just angry villain. leave a like, leave a subscribe and a comment, and I hope you have a lovely day, and I will see you in the next video. Thank you.
Take it from the humans. Prove you are still worth your price. You were savage, merciless, and cruel. I am impressed.